Say it louder, Stephen Shea sneered over the alarm, champagne sloshing onto marble. If you can fix this engine, I'll marry you, Metal shrieked. Someone laughed, and the woman with the trash bag finally said, Turn it off, now. Now, let me tell you how this incredible story unfolded. But before you continue, take a quiet second. Become part of this journey. Subscribe, not just to follow a channel, but to stay connected. Share your heart in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from, because your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. The engine screamed like it was alive. Not a clean mechanical whine, but a wounded, uneven howl that crawled under the skin and rattled the glass walls of Apex Dynamics' executive floor in downtown Phoenix. Red warning lights strobed across polished concrete. Engineers froze mid-argument. Investors instinctively stepped back. And Samantha Green stood perfectly still by the door, fingers clenched tight around a black trash bag, her knuckles burning white through cheap latex gloves. She wasn't supposed to be there. Apex Dynamics didn't invite janitors into crisis rooms, especially not during a live systems failure 3 days before a federally monitored demonstration that could lock in a multi-billion-dollar defense and logistics contract. But trash didn't wait for billion-dollar meltdowns, and neither did Samantha's night shift. Stephen Shea leaned back in his leather chair like the chaos amused him. At 41, he wore wealth the way some men wore cologne, intentionally noticeable. Crisp white dress shirt, no tie. Watch worth more than Samantha's car. The kind of smile that looked warm until you realized it never reached his eyes. If this thing blows again, Stephen said lightly, raising his voice over the alarm. Germany walks. The Pentagon walks. And I walk away with a crater where my reputation used to be. Someone laughed nervously. Stephen's gaze drifted, lazy, searching, until it landed on Samantha. She felt it immediately. That familiar sensation, like a spotlight snapping on somewhere you didn't agree to stand. Well, look at that, he said. Facility support's still here. A few executives turned. One whispered, Is she supposed to be? Stephen waved them off, eyes never leaving her. Hey, he called. You? What's your name? Samantha swallowed. Her voice came out steady anyway. Samantha. Perfect, Stephen grinned. Samantha. You've been listening to this thing scream all night, right? She nodded once, not because she was intimidated, but because it was true. Great, he said. Then here's a thought experiment. The room quieted. Phones lifted. Someone in the corner was already live streaming to internal stakeholders. Stephen gestured grandly to the engine bay behind the glass. If you can fix it, right now, I'll marry you. The laughter came sharp and immediate, careless, practiced. Samantha didn't laugh. She didn't look away either. The engine shrieked again, higher this time, pitch climbing into something almost panicked. Her chest tightened, because she knew that sound. She'd known it for weeks. Because, while Apex's engineers argued software patches and AI feedback loops, Samantha had been mopping these floors at 2 a.m, pausing whenever the engine ran diagnostics, listening, feeling the vibration through the soles of her shoes. She'd felt this failure coming. Stephen mistook her silence for embarrassment. Relax, he said, chuckling. It's a joke. Don't quit over it. Something in Samantha hardened. She set the trash bag down carefully. Turn it off, she said. The room stilled, not because she shouted, but because she didn't. Stephen blinked. Excuse me? Turn it off, she repeated. You're pushing it past harmonic tolerance. An engineer scoffed. That's not. The engine screamed again, and this time a sharp metallic crack echoed through the bay. Stephen's smile faltered. For the first time, he looked at Samantha, not as a punchline, but as a variable he hadn't accounted for. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that you know what's wrong?" Samantha met his eyes. "I'm telling you, you're listening to the wrong people." Silence pressed down on the room. This was the moment people usually backed down, apologized, shrunk. Samantha didn't. She'd grown up in a South Carolina shipping yard where her father rebuilt diesel engines with cracked knuckles and no patience for nonsense. She'd learned young that machines didn't care who you were, only whether you respected their limits. She respected this engine. Stephen stood. "All right," he said, clapping once. "Let's make this interesting." He glanced at the live stream camera, then back to her. 2 hours, live feed. If you're wrong, you walk. If you're right. His smile returned. Thin. Dangerous. "We'll talk." The engineers protested. The investors whispered. Samantha felt the weight of every eye in the room, and something else, too. A quiet, familiar ache. The knowledge that moments like this were rare. That people like her didn't get second chances. She nodded once. "Turn off the alarm," she said, "and let me hear it breathe." If this moment stirred something uncomfortable in you, if you've ever watched someone be dismissed before they were even heard, stay close. Some stories only unfold because people choose not to look away. Stephen gestured sharply. "Do it." The alarm cut. The engine fell silent. And for the first time since Samantha Green started cleaning Apex Dynamics floors, the building finally listened to her. The silence after the alarm shut off was heavier than the noise had been. Without the scream of the engine, Apex Dynamics' executive floor felt exposed. Too quiet, too clean. Like a showroom pretending nothing had gone wrong. Through the glass wall, the prototype hybrid propulsion unit sat inert, heat shimmering faintly off its titanium casing as if it were catching its breath. Stephen Shea broke the stillness first. "You've got 90 minutes, he said, checking his watch. "Federal observers are patched in. My board is watching from Scottsdale. Don't waste time performing." Samantha didn't answer him. She stepped past the semicircle of executives and engineers, crossed the polished concrete floor, and pressed her palm flat against the engine housing. It was warm, not overheating yet, but wrong. She closed her eyes. An engineer muttered, "Is she praying?" Samantha ignored it. She shifted her weight, feeling the vibration travel up through her arm, into her shoulder, settling somewhere behind her sternum. The frequency was subtle now, but it was there. A low, stubborn thrum, like a note held just slightly off key. "This isn't software," she said quietly. A senior systems engineer bristled. "We've run 47 diagnostics, and they all assume the machine is lying," Samantha replied, opening her eyes. "It's not." Stephen folded his arms. "Explain, slowly, because right now, this looks like theater." Samantha turned to face them. Really face them. "I clean this floor every night," she said. "I'm here when the building's empty. I hear this engine when it's not trying to impress anyone." A few executives shifted uncomfortably. "The core components were machined overseas," she continued. "Ultra-tight tolerances, cleaner than domestic specs. But your adaptive control system," she nodded toward the monitor wall, "was calibrated for looser variants, so the AI keeps correcting something that's already perfect." One engineer scoffed. "That doesn't cause catastrophic failure." "It does," Samantha said, "when correction becomes interference." She walked to the whiteboard, no one stopped her, and picked up a marker. She drew a sine wave, then another, slightly misaligned. "Resonance instability," she said. "You've created a system that's fighting itself. Every adjustment amplifies the vibration instead of dampening it. That's why it fails at the same runtime threshold. Every single time. The room went quiet again, but this time it was different. Stephen stared at the board. Why hasn't anyone seen this? Samantha hesitated. Because no one asked me, she thought. Because I don't look like your idea of an engineer. Instead, she said, because you don't listen to the machine. You listen to the data you want it to give you. Stephen's jaw tightened. Can you fix it? He asked. Yes. How? She capped the marker. With a resonance buffer, physical, not digital. You don't need to rewrite anything. An engineer shook his head. That's not in the design scope. Samantha met his eyes. Neither is failure. Minutes passed in tense silence while Stephen weighed optics against desperation. Finally, he nodded once. Do it, he said. But if this costs me the demo, it won't, she replied. She moved with quiet confidence, directing engineers twice her age without raising her voice. They resisted at first, correcting her terminology, questioning her measurements. But one by one, they fell in line as her predictions kept landing with unnerving accuracy. As they worked, Stephen lingered nearby, watching her hands. Watching the way she listened, not just with her ears but with her whole body. You learned this where? He asked suddenly. Samantha didn't look up. At home. On Broken Things. Something flickered across his face. Curiosity, maybe, or guilt. She installed the custom buffer, an unassuming component worth less than $100, and stepped back. Power it up, she said. The engine hummed to life, smooth, steady. 10 minutes passed, then 15. The vibration eased, the pitch settled. For the first time since the project began, the engine sounded content. A murmur rippled through the room. Stephen exhaled slowly. I underestimated you. Samantha glanced at him. You still are. The words weren't cruel. Just honest. As the engine continued to run flawlessly, Stephen felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. Not attraction, not yet, but discomfort. The kind that came from realizing the world made sense in a way you'd been actively ignoring. If you've ever watched someone prove their worth after being laughed at, and felt that quiet shift inside where pride gives way to respect, this is one of those moments worth holding on to. Staying connected to stories like this isn't about entertainment. It's about remembering who deserves to be heard. Outside the glass, the prototype vehicle activated, rolling forward without a hitch. The room erupted, not in laughter this time, but stunned applause, and Stephen Shea, for the first time in his career, didn't know whether he was witnessing a triumph or the beginning of his reckoning. The applause didn't last. It never does. At Apex Dynamics, celebration was always provisional, leased on performance, revoked at the first sign of liability. As the prototype engine continued to run smoothly behind the glass, executives clustered into quiet, urgent knots. Phones buzzed with messages from Washington, D.C. and Scottsdale boardrooms. Federal observers requested documentation. Lawyers appeared as if summoned by vibration alone. And Samantha Green stood off to the side, suddenly very aware that she was still wearing a janitor's uniform. Stephen Shea hadn't clapped. He watched the room instead, watched the narrative slipping out of his control. Shut it down, he said abruptly. The engine powered down, obedient and calm. Stephen turned to the head of engineering. We'll proceed with the demo using her fix. But this, he glanced at Samantha, this stays internal. The words landed like a slap. Samantha frowned. What does that mean? It means, Stephen said carefully, that we don't frame this as a failure of leadership. We position it as an internal optimization. An engineer shifted uncomfortably. She identified the flaw. Stephen's eyes flashed. And she works for facilities. The room went cold. Samantha felt the familiar ache return, that sinking, exhausting realization that competence didn't always translate to protection. "You put me on a live feed," she said. "You made me a spectacle." "That was different," Stephen replied. "This is about risk." "Risk to who?" He hesitated half a beat too long. The silence answered for him. Samantha stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You don't get to use me when you're desperate, and erase me when you're safe." Stephen stiffened. "You're asking me to upend a company days before a federal contract. I'm asking you to tell the truth." "The truth," he snapped, "is that the board didn't hire you. They didn't vet you. And they will not stake billions on a story that starts with a janitor embarrassing our engineering team." The words cut deeper than the joke ever had. Around them, people pretended not to listen. Samantha nodded slowly. "So that's it." Stephen softened his tone. "I'll make sure you're compensated, quietly, generously." She laughed once, short, humorless. "You really don't hear yourself. This is how the world works," he said. "I didn't make it that way." "No," she replied, "but you benefit from it." She turned to leave. Stephen watched her go. Something tight and ugly coiling in his chest. He told himself it was frustration. Logistics. Damage control. Not regret. The next morning, the demo began under a cloudless Arizona sky. The prototype vehicle performed flawlessly. Federal observers nodded. The livestream buzzed with praise. Apex Dynamics stock ticked upward in real time. Stephen stood at the podium, confident again, delivering rehearsed lines about innovation and teamwork. He didn't mention Samantha, but the internet did. A clip, grainy, partial, began circulating. Stephen's voice, the joke, the laughter, Samantha's calm response. "Turn it off. Now." By noon, it was trending. By 1, journalists were calling. By 2, the board was furious. Stephen retreated to his office, scrolling through comments that alternated between outrage and awe. He felt exposed, not because of the joke, but because the world had seen him as he really was. There was a knock at the door. Samantha stood there holding a folder. "I'm done cleaning here," she said. "HR asked for my badge." Stephen gestured her in, suddenly unsure. "This is getting out of hand." "It already did," she replied. She slid the folder onto his desk. "That's my documentation. Time-stamped diagnostics, emails I sent to engineering weeks ago that went unanswered." He opened it, dread creeping in. "This isn't revenge," she said quietly. "It's insurance." Stephen looked up. "You're going to burn the company down. I'm going to stop you from pretending this was an accident." For a moment, something real flickered between them, respect tangled with anger, attraction strangled by power. "You could stay," he said suddenly. "Lead diagnostics. We'll announce it properly." Samantha met his gaze. "Not like this." She turned to leave again. This time, Stephen didn't stop her. As the door closed, the weight of what he'd lost settled fully in his chest. Not just control, but the chance to be better when it mattered. Outside, the Arizona sun burned bright and unforgiving. And for the first time in his life, Stephen Shea wondered if walking away from someone who told the truth would cost him more than any contract ever could. Act 4. Resolution and Transformation. The reckoning didn't arrive with sirens or a courtroom. It arrived with a memo. 3 days after the demo, Apex Dynamics employees opened their inboxes to the same subject line: Independent Governance Review, Immediate Effect. Stephen Shea read it alone in his office, the Arizona afternoon bleeding orange through the glass. The board had moved faster than he expected, faster than he deserved. He was relieved of operational control, effective immediately. No dramatic firing, no public spectacle, just a quiet stripping of authority, the kind that stung worse because it was clean. Across town in Tempe, Samantha Green stood in line at a Trader Joe's, phone buzzing nonstop in her pocket. She hadn't cleaned an executive floor in a week. She hadn't slept much either. When she finally checked her messages, there were dozens. Journalists, recruiters, a voicemail from Apex's board chair requesting a meeting, with counsel present. She stepped outside into the heat, sat in her car, and let herself breathe. For the first time in her adult life, the future didn't feel like a narrowing hallway. The meeting took place at the Arizona Biltmore. All white stone and manicured calm. The board didn't waste time. They offered her the role she should have had years ago: lead diagnostics engineer, full authority, equity, and a public acknowledgement of her contribution, by name. Samantha listened, asked questions, took notes. Then she said, "I accept, on one condition." They leaned in. "I don't report to Stephen Shea." The chair nodded. "You won't." When Samantha stood to leave, the chair added gently, "He asked if he could speak to you, off the record." She considered it, then nodded once. Stephen waited on the terrace, jacket off, tie gone, looking smaller without an audience. "I owe you an apology," he said immediately. No jokes, no charm. Samantha folded her arms. "That's a start. I thought confidence was leadership," he continued. "Turns out it was just noise." She studied him, the man who'd made her a spectacle, the man who'd lost everything because he couldn't listen. "You don't need my forgiveness to be better," she said. "You just need to stop mistaking power for proof." He swallowed. "I meant what I said before. About staying, about—" She cut him off gently. "I know. And someday, you might even mean it for the right reasons." They stood there, the desert wind moving between them, something unspoken settling into place. Not romance yet, but respect, real, earned. Weeks later, Apex Dynamics ran the engine again. This time, Samantha stood at the center of the room, not holding a trash bag, but a tablet. When the engine purred to life, smooth and stable, she smiled. The same engine, a different harmony. Stephen watched from a distance, no longer in charge, but finally paying attention. If you stayed with this story to the end, it's probably because you believe unseen work deserves recognition. Staying connected to stories like this, choosing not to look away when quiet brilliance speaks, matters more than algorithms ever will. Outside, the Arizona sun dipped low, casting long shadows that no longer hid anyone. And, for the first time, Samantha Greens didn't have to raise her voice to be heard. The end.